Tom Brady, I thought he was going to stay retired because Tom's very detailed and planned out. He's not kind of an ad-lib guy. But I said there's a 5% chance, and my reasoning was the days are really long. They're really long. Every day I find myself going, all right, I'm done with stuff. It's 11:45 in the morning every Saturday. And I've seen athletes do this. I want to retire. They have dad guilt. I want to retire. I want to spend more time with my family. And then 7 weeks later, they miss hanging around and doing what they do for a living. So if Brady is anything, though, he's super hyper competitive. We know that, right? He's very driven, very competitive, very aspirational. I think some of this is, number one, Tom looked around the NFC. Russell Wilson left the conference. San Francisco is relying on a kid, Trey Lance. Arizona's talented but noisy. Dallas always underachieves. And Aaron Rodgers got more money, but you're already seeing this morning they have to get rid of people. And Tom looked around and thought, okay, what's my roadblock? The Rams. But Tom's been in this league long enough. Winning back-to-back Super Bowls is almost impossible in this league. It's almost impossible. Guys get a little fat and lazy. They go to too many, parades. They have an extra beer in the offseason. It's just not the same. So much of the NFL, because the competition is so close, so much of it is your will, your offseason. Do you come in ready to go? So I think a big part of it is Tom looked around at the landscape. And we talked about this. Joy and I talked about this. You kind of look around, you're like, man, the bottom of the NFC is big. There's a lot of bad teams and a lot of easy W's, and his division stinks. And the other thing I think is dad guilt. I think highly driven moms and highly driven dads always struggle with guilt. Am I spending time with my kids? Am I spending time with my husband or wife? And Tom had dad guilt. But his kids are getting older. If you've got kids, by 12, 13, they got options too. And his wife, she doesn't stay home much. International. Giselle's busy. The kids have a life. And Tom, after about 6-7 weeks, is like, okay, it's 10:45 in the morning. Anybody want to hang out? And the kids are gone. Giselle doing stuff. And it's like, I really miss football. So I think Tom's hyper-competitive. He surveyed everything. I think there's the dad guilt, which I've talked to a lot of buddies for a long time about this. And the other thing we have to be honest about is Tom's taking care of himself. Marino was hobbled at the end. Elway was hobbled. Peyton was hobbled. Kurt Warner got whacked. All these guys fell apart physically, but athletes last longer. LeBron scored 50 points twice last week. LeBron James is in his 19th year. He's averaging 29.5 points a game. Now think about that. I grew up with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. He lasted forever. You couldn't stop his skyhook the last day he left the NBA. It's the best shot. Forget Jordan. It's the most unstoppable shot ever. Never been duplicated. The skyhook. His last year in the league, and Kareem is a smart guy who's in impeccable shape. He averaged 14 points a game. LeBron's averaging over double that. And some of that's just a credit to LeBron, but it's not like Kareem wasn't in shape. The reality is you fly team planes, nutrition's better, training staffs are better, athletes go home, the pliability stuff, they last longer. Brady is fine. He remains the best pre-snap quarterback in the NFL. The division stinks. The NFC's wide open. Dad guilt. After about 8 weeks, you're like, house has been running without me for years. It's going to be just fine. The only surprise in this to me, and it is a surprise because I didn't think he would come back. The only surprise in it for me is Tom is so detailed and so meticulous and such a planner that he's not the kind of guy that's just like, go either way on this stuff. But he said on the Jim Gray podcast about 6 weeks ago, he said, I don't know, I never say never. So he left the door open. And I think people like Tom, I think this is common throughout America for men and women, moms and dads, and single people who are just willful. It's hard to say it's over when you're still great at it. He led the NFL in passing yards and TD passes? I mean, he was an MVP candidate. I think he finished second in the voting. The division's bad. The NFC's kind of bad. I get it. Surprised me, but I get it.